So we're going to start though with the North London derby. Big game that was, one of the biggest at the weekend, probably the most prominent fixture that we were looking forward to, Leon, all weekend. When you saw the teams that the two coaches picked pre-game, what was you thinking?
Well, I think the big news was Aubameyang not being in the starting lineup. That decision that Mikel Arteta made to leave him out over a disciplinary act, turning up late, which, you know, I think I can quite understand. You know, despite him being the captain, despite him being, you know, as prolific as he is in front of goal, you have to still do the rules that the team set. You have to still be involved in all that. Having said that, looking at both sides, I thought we were in for a real game. I thought Spurs had gone attacking like we all wanted them to. We'd expect the way they closed down lately, they'd take the game to Arsenal. And I thought Arsenal certainly had enough to score goals against Spurs.
Yeah, when I looked at the teams, and I've really been impressed with Emile Smith-Rowe, and I kind of when he doesn't play, it's a bit like this guy, Bukayo Saka, early on in the season, Leon. Whenever he didn't play, they just seemed to be lacking something. So I was genuinely excited. I'm sure the Arsenal fans around the world were as well going into this game. I thought that looked like a team, particularly again with Odegaard. Had a nice blend there, plenty of energy, plenty of youthfulness, bit of spontaneity, as well as, you know, some older heads here with Xhaka and David Luiz. I think that was potentially a really good team. For Spurs, Gareth Bale just of late has looked like the Gareth Bale everybody wanted to see when he first come to the club. It didn't happen for him on the day. We're going to get stuck into it, but why do you think, Leon, when you first think about it, what was lacking in this performance?
They just seemed too passive. They seemed to sort of go out there and allow Arsenal to dictate the play. I don't know whether I'd say they were scared of what Arsenal had to offer, but they seemed happy enough to stay behind, like probably we've seen Jose Mourinho's sides do in the past. But, you know, we'd seen a different approach from Spurs in the last three games against Crystal Palace and Burnley. And I think it was Fulham that they took the game. They really went at them. They I'm not going to say didn't show the opposition respect, but they believed that they were better than the opposition, and they went out and showed it, where I didn't feel that was the case against Arsenal. No,
we'll get right into this, and we've got some really interesting clips. But to just hammer home Leon's point there about the mindset from the Spurs team against the likes of Palace, against some of those other teams maybe lower down in the table. It was very apparent in this Palace game, Leon, wasn't it, where you can see Spurs at the moment, back four, right up on the halfway line, so pretty much saying we're going to stay here, we're not worried about anything you're going to put behind. And then they're just waiting for the right moment, Leon, to kind of just set the trap, and now away they go.
They are, but they push people over this side of the field as well. Look at them trying to make sure that Crystal Palace can't get out. I think that's Gareth Bale come over. Moura's already over. Kane's stopping them, getting out comfortably on the other side. They're pushing through at the back, pretty much going man for man, leaving the difficult pass at the far side of the field, and they got their rewards from it in this instance.
They really did. That is really good play from Spurs. Now they're up against a team at the weekend that have had problems playing out from the back, Leon. This was the Burnley game.
Yep, exactly what we've just seen. Burnley doing it this time. Burnley pressing in, man for man, pressing in to make sure that there's no easy pass, not a comfortable opportunity to get out, and we know. We've seen it time and time again. Arsenal take chances. Arsenal will keep playing in dangerous areas. And if you press them, as Burnley do, you'll get your reward. And the fact that we'd seen all of that before the game, the matchup of the two styles, you just felt that was the way the game had panned out. But
it didn't.
You know, it didn't.
So with that in mind, with the fact that we've just seen Spurs pressing, we know that Arsenal, as Leon says, might want to take one or two risks. Let's have a look then at this kind of passive scenario that Spurs seem to drop into at the weekend. So, this is a really good clip. It's a long clip, but it's an interesting one where Bernd Leno's got the ball in his hands. Now, we know that Arsenal are going to play out, so Spurs kind of here, Leon, at this point, drop into a shape that we would expect. And in a North London derby, in a big game that means a lot to both sets of players, I'm waiting for one of these guys now to say, I'm off, and everybody else follows, and that back four stay right up on the halfway line. But this was kind of synonymous with what happened in the entire game.
And there's a few ways of pressing. There's the fact that as soon as they drop the ball and make a pass, we all go screaming in, or you go off a trigger, whereas you sort of get in position and you shuffle them into an area that you want them to be, and then suddenly you go. So the fact they dropped off at this point, you see they dropped off, Moura's dropped off, they come back. I thought or maybe they're just allowing them to get into these areas of the field here, and then they'll go. But as it goes on, they just got deeper and deeper. Nobody really showed any willingness. Okay, Højbjerg, half goes in there, but once one goes, that has to be the key. So Højbjerg goes, so now Kane should go, Moura should go. It's the wrong one there, but everybody should then start to be
on their toes, ready to go.
But they weren't.
The bit that also interests me with Gabriel is obviously a very decent player. He's not as good as this man in terms of distributing and playing the ball. So you'd have thought maybe the game plan might have been a bit, let Gabriel have it, let him, Leon, maybe let him travel in this let him travel in this direction with the ball a little bit and force him to then look for something forward where you can potentially turn the ball over.
Absolutely, and as I showed you before on the other clip, it was Bale on the other side. Bale would have took up this position if it was on the other side of the field, but look how deep Son is. That's the difference in positions. You say to the opposition, you can have that pass. It's such a long pass, it's a difficult pass. You'd have to go over the head of Son, who'll be in that position. You can have that, but the moment you pass that to David Luiz, the moment you attempt to make that pass, Son from that position is on his toes. But throughout the whole pitch, they were never in a position to stop an Arsenal pass. They were never in a position. They just sort of, you've seen them backing off again and backing off. There's that pass now. Son should have been on top of that.
Yeah.
But as this pass comes over...
If he's here, he can start to squeeze and start to threaten that. And again, this guy has got excellent distribution. Whatever people think about David Luiz, he can play and he can pick people out, as he will do later on in this clip. So again, Tottenham still keeping their shape. By the way, Arsenal aren't going anywhere. That would be Jose Mourinho would be thinking this is all fine, that's okay. But already Spurs have retreated from kind of here, haven't they, Leon? And then they drop back.
Well, I've just showed it there. They've gone all the way from that first line. They've done all the way back to here without any real pressure, without directing Arsenal where they want them to go, without showing any pattern of how they're planning on to defend or press. They've just been very passive.
And when you do that when the front line start to drop, you'll now notice the back four are already having to drop close on 10 yards back into their own territory. Now you can see Alderweireld and Davinson Sanchez. Can't go too tight. No pressure on this ball at all. So everyone kind of would know the game plan here, and we're not going to squeeze it. There's no real trigger, but I've seen David Luiz with time and space on the ball, Leon, find teammates and hurt teams from that position. He did it in a game against Leicester earlier on this season when Leicester did the same thing. They dropped off. And if you allow him to pick passes out, he can do it. And I was just very surprised with this kind of attitude and the mindset that Spurs dropped into. They've done this very successfully against Man City earlier on in the season, where they let City have the ball, they kept this shape, and then when they did manage to pinch it, they got out through Son in particular very, very quickly. But it never happened.
Manchester City are a different proposition than Arsenal.
Well, and again, is the mindset now that this is the way Spurs go against whoever it is?
Well, it would seem so, but this, I know there's no fans in the stadium, but this is a derby. This is a North London derby, and Arsenal at the moment, and we'll show it time and time again, don't have to work very hard to keep possession of the ball. They're never pressurised. There's not really trying to win the ball in anyway. And look how David Luiz is walking forward still. Any real pressure on the ball? No, nothing. You know, Harry Kane still not moving forward. Passing it across again. Any real... Bale makes half a run there, but once Bale's made that run, then you'd expect, OK, Bale's put a little bit of pressure on, so where's Moura? Where's Son?
Yeah.
Højbjerg's in a not too bad position, but where's the reaction off that first moment when somebody puts a bit of pressure?
Yeah, usually...
It's constantly on its own.
As you say, usually there is some sort of trigger. But it comes to David Luiz, again, he's having a look, he's waiting for the right moment. Now, again, here, this particular time, Harry Kane is so preoccupied there with wanting to get back and sit on top of a midfield player close to him. Whereas actually, to me, I think Harry Kane, Leon, would have been better off if he puts himself sort of here somewhere. Puts himself just in between Gabriel and David Luiz, forcing Arsenal to maybe play into where those white shirts have got.
Think back to that. If you think back to that first clip, that's it. Kane would be here. Lucas Moura would be round about here. Son would be in them positions. Look at the difference in actual spaces and positions where when they're close and when they're on the ball, when they're actually trying to be tight to people, that's the positions they adopt. They force teams down one side, and if you start from that position, look how much more difficult it would have been for Arsenal to sort of play and pass. But they just dropped off. They were so passive. It was.
They did. And when this ball eventually comes back to David Luiz, right? Look, he's almost looking as if he's going to come down here towards Cedric. He knows exactly where he's going, which was very much their game plan.
But he's also had the ball in that position 3 or 4 times. He's thought about it. He's made easy passes, but because he wants to be positive, because he's that type of player, he wants to make Arsenal. He wants to start the attack himself.
Yep.
He's sort of embarrassed into playing the pass himself. If they're going to give me this much time and time again, I'll hurt them.
And again, so if you imagine, when this whole move started initially, the Spurs forward line was here. They've gradually filtered back to here with no real pressure on the ball. The back 4 to start with were right on the halfway line. Now they've got, a lower defensive position, a lower block. But crucially, you've got a man who can play with tons of time. Tons of time on the ball.
And this is, as I said, the 4th time. You give Gabriel that time, they can't make that pass. David Luiz can. And look, from that, you've dropped off, you've been passive because you're staying in your shape, and suddenly you're defending a header in your 6-yard box.
Yeah.
OK, that happens once in a game. Then suddenly you pull yourselves together as teammates and you say, right, we can't let that happen again. We have to change. But it didn't.
I wondered, when I watched the game, I wondered about Harry Kane's fitness levels going into this, whether and because he has had those ankle knocks and he's so durable in many ways and always wants to play and get himself out there, but he didn't look like he had any energy on the day to me. He really didn't, and I feel that in the forward press, he's the kind of one, Leon, I'm looking to that might go and sort of spark the others into doing it, but he never did it. At any point, he didn't really threaten the ball.
No, if you're going to do the press, one cog cannot let you down. Everybody has to be on it. People like Moura can't be running past Harry Kane to put the pressure on. Son can't be running past Harry Kane to put the pressure on. So if one person maybe isn't fully fit,
he wants
him
to give it back to Gabriel.
There were moments in the game where I did question it myself.
But when David Luiz gives it to the midfield player,
you're going to struggle to play the press in that way.
And that man's got to be Harry Kane. If you're going to drop in there, you've then got to do something for the team.
Definitely. If you're not going to do that role and get tight, then
just
when you get in there,
I do think again here, when Arsenal end up David Luiz firing, now Harry Kane has sort of got his eyes on Thomas Partey a little bit. He wants him to give it back to Gabriel.
And now he's looking forward.
But when David Luiz gives it to the midfield player,
so he's going to play
someone's got to be snapping at his heels. And that man's got to be Harry Kane. If you're going to drop in there, you've then got to do something for the team.
Definitely. If you're not going to do that role and get tight, then when you get in there, you've got to be putting that pressure on. You're right. But from Arsenal's point of view, look how positive they've been. David Luiz has played a pass that split some lines. Partey's got turned, and now he's looking forward. Saka's made a run at the bottom, so he's going to play the pass. And Spurs seem to find themselves caught out, but Arsenal were very positive in the game.
Yeah. Again, lots of examples of the way that Spurs just tended to drop into a shape without really applying any pressure on the ball. And good players are going to pick people out. And all of a sudden now you've got 4 red shirts in your box with a better pass there. That could well have ended up with a shot on target. Second half, no real difference, Leon.
No, none at all. And if you're going to drop off, as I was saying before, if you're going to keep on being passive, then you have to block the passing lanes. If you're going to not be putting pressure on people, you have to make sure that the spaces in between these players are so tight that you can't
play through it.
You can't play through it. You can't get people on the ball in these pockets. But there's just the ease at which they allow these type of passes. Tottenham allowed Arsenal to play them all day long was frightening.
Yeah.
And Højbjerg pointing the finger, not sure whose responsibility it was, and Arsenal completely took advantage of that. That
happened a lot. Hashtag PL fans. Come on, you Tottenham fans out there, get your messages up to Leroy. Leroy, you've had plenty already. What's everyone saying?
I've had lots, Andy. Chris Wine says, Leroy, did you notice that Tottenham played better with 10 men than they did with 11? Does that mean Lamela was not helping the team? Well, it doesn't. It means at 10 men, they were chasing the game. And I just wondered, guys, when you played, which one did you prefer to play? An arrest defence where you just sat off, or did you want to get after the ball? And why did you want to play the way that you're going to choose?
I never played in a team, Leroy, that sat and waited and just sat and sat and sat. Always, that's dangerous. I was much happier. I was personally playing for a team that you squeeze up and you pinch the ball in opposing territory, you've then got a chance to hurt them. That's always been the mindset with Jurgen Klopp's best team, with Pep's best team. They win the ball high up the field. We have maybe one or two passes and we're straight at them. So that's...
Well, there's moments for everything. I mean, I've played both, and I've played where you press right up, and as Andy said, that is a very positive way of playing, but everybody has to be on their job. Yeah. But if you're dropping off, which there's no problem with playing that if you've got the weapons and the pace, which Spurs has, once they get up to a certain area of the field, then you do have to start putting that press on. There becomes a moment in the field where, despite how much you drop off, the press starts. Yeah. You can't allow them just to pass it all the way to your goal. But Spurs just kept dropping off.
Leroy,
and that was what was frightening on the day.
Can I just ask you, Leroy, as a striker, did you trigger the press? Was it you more often than not? Was it your decision when we're going to go?
It was always me, and we always went to the weaker centre-half. You know, whatever side the weaker centre-half was playing, as soon as the ball was on his way to him, I would trigger the press. But if I could get close to him, I would go quickly. If I could affect the ball, if I couldn't affect the ball, I'd go at a slower pace to just slow him down. And the reason we did that early in the game, Andy and Leon, is because if we set the tempo without the ball, it kind of set the tempo when we had the ball.
When you get
in terms of our passing, it made us sharper, made us brighter. And I just thought that Spurs performance, because they didn't press early, when they got on the ball, they were slow as well. But maybe you'll show a little bit more of that later.
I've got to be honest, there were moments, though, when I was playing behind a striker like Leroy that would go and put the press on, and I'd think, oh, he's gone again. Oh, he's gone again. I'm going to have to go.
I've got to go.
Yeah, you have to go. But that's we were talking about Spurs, that at times one of them went and the rest didn't. You have to go. It doesn't matter. If your striker starts the press, regardless of your position, your tiredness, your desire, you've got to go. You've got to back him up. You've got to press as a team. But you know, if you don't do it, then you get found out.
Leroy, thank you for that. Keep your messages coming into Leroy. We'll get through as many of them as we can. Look, Jose Mourinho was clearly unhappy after the game, and he spoke about players and key players hiding. Just have a listen to this. Interesting there, hiding. Key players hiding. You know, now, who's you think he is referring to there? I mean, is he referring to the likes of Harry Kane?
I think he is. I think there were moments in the game that not necessarily didn't show for the ball, but certainly didn't make forward runs, didn't put options on for his teammates. Gareth Bale will obviously be the same, but you know, I felt that through the middle of the park, hiding doesn't always mean that you don't show for the ball. It means you're not brave enough in possession at times, and I thought that started from the midfield too of Tottenham Hotspur. I think, you know, just pause this clip as this comes to. Now, this is a position that, as a midfielder, you want to be in. You've
plenty of time.
Plenty of time. You face them forward. You've got options. I mean, you're not telling me a player of his quality can't find a Harry Kane in there, or find a Lamela in there, I think it is, or you know, look at Relion in that position. He's already started to make this run. If you're positive, and you're determined to make good passes, then you should be able to get that. Okay, he turned down that first pass to Harry Kane, but that's still available. That is definitely still available, and a very positive pass. Look at Mikel Arteta. He can see it. He's worried about that run that could be played in there. But, as happened time and time again, safe pass.
Yeah, and when you say safe, Leon, just pause that there. When you say safe, you mean now obviously by safe, you're saying that Arsenal's back four hasn't been disrupted, and Tottenham haven't been able to penetrate past those midfield players.
Well, exactly. There's still Arsenal with 10 men behind the ball. You know, the midfield four are still in place. Even the number 10, Ødegaard, has managed to get himself behind the ball. It's not hurting anybody. If anything, what was we saying 5 seconds ago? Mikel Arteta was worried.
He was panicking.
Now he's delighted.
Exactly.
Now his team are in a great position. And that becomes, we're not positive enough with their passing. They weren't trying to affect the Arsenal defence as much as they should.
Yeah. Here you see Lucas Moura. He finds Eric Lamela, pops that back to Højbjerg. Now from there, where can he possibly go from here? If he wanted to be ultra positive, if he wanted to spring Tottenham on the counter attack on the front foot.
Well, you take a touch out of your feet and you play that. Look at that pass on again. That's the one. Arsenal gave Spurs these opportunities in the game. I mean, Gareth Bale has made a slight run in there to even make the gap even bigger.
Because he knows, he's encouraging now Doherty to get going.
The pass is there, but he just tries to play that simple pass and he doesn't even get it right. He makes a poor pass. Suddenly, Spurs now getting into these positions on the field. I'll just run it through slowly. As we do, I want to just stop there. Look at this, happen time and time again. Both of those two players pointing for somebody else to receive the ball, pointing for someone else to take a pass. And as I said, for Arsenal again, in trouble moments ago, could have been exposed suddenly. What's that?
Everybody
behind the ball, everybody in good positions. And Arsenal didn't have to work hard defensively. They didn't have to work hard to win the ball back either.
This one, Leon, I really like this one because Ndombele's on the ball. Now they play a little triangle here. They work a little triangle. Now again, Højbjerg in this position. Could he not? Could his first thought not be, I'm just going to take 3 or 4 yards and go forward, just move forward with
Definitely.
the ball?
It's a mental thing, and it's your first thought, can I play forward? But he's not. He's just thinking about keeping the ball. What can I see? Where can I play it? But look at that space that he's in. I'm saying as a midfielder, can you get turned? Can you play that pass? Can you play that pass?
Yeah.
Can you make a positive effect on your team? He doesn't. So then he comes back to Ndombele.
Yeah. And again, now, when Mourinho spoke about players hiding, once Ndombele there has declined to go back to Alderweireld, he's now looking forward. Now, come on, boys, where are you? Now I need to see some movement in front of me. Now I want either Son darting in there, I want Harry Kane maybe doing that, as Son goes in the other direction, just to disrupt that Arsenal back line. And if you watch Ndombele, he wants to give it to somebody, but there's nothing. And in the end, he has to go backwards to a centre-half. And all this time, Harry Kane still pretty much in the same position. Son pretty much still in the same position. Gareth Bale still in the same position.
But how often have you seen... Now, there are times when a striker or a wide forward, as we call them these days, will make runs when a player has it deep. But quite often it depends on a player they believe has the quality to make the pass. And quite often it depends on the length of the pass. Where you always want, you think about the best players in the world, they always want that link pass. They always want that pass threaded from the back into your Lamellas, into your number 10s, into your Moras, so that they can turn. And once they get the ball, that's when these three players then come alive. Whereas they were starved of the ball. Højbjerg and Ndombele just didn't play
safe all day.
Played safe constantly, all day, time after time, and didn't give them the option. Look at Højbjerg pointing again for where the pass should be played to. Ball goes forward into this position. Now this is the one about Harry Kane. You know, about is he really trying? I just want to highlight him here in the middle. This is Spurs now on the halfway line with good possession of the ball. Surely, look at all that space. Surely there's got to be a thought that, can I get into that space?
Or even if you make some sort of run, you just might drag Xhaka or whoever that is or someone else out of position to free up a big bit of space for somebody else to potentially come and move into. But again, Lamella's looking, he's having to dribble, and ultimately it's a pass that goes backwards. Again, Harry Kane there, you can't see him. Harry Kane's moved from there to there. And I don't know why this was. And by the way, this is a player that I think we all appreciate is an amazing front man. He really is, Harry Kane. But at the weekend, seemed to lack energy, seemed to lack any real movement, I thought.
He did. And sometimes if there is a player like that on your team, he's just in the way. You might as well tell him just to go and stand up front or just go and stand on the wing, because it can be a hindrance if you've got that. But I want to highlight Lamela again. How can he, Højbjerg again, how can he possibly get the ball there behind a player? And his instinct is to go that way rather than that way into that space to get the ball. If he suddenly gets himself in this position, then he can again get turned
and get Doherty going in his forward position.
Play that forward pass. He doesn't. His instinct is to go backwards, then stand next to his centre back here in possession of the ball and just take a pass. And what can I do with it? Well, all I can do is pass. I'm still in the way, I think.
And look, watch him now, look. He's telling people, he's got the ball at his feet and he's saying, we're going to calm down. I'm slowing it down. You needed to speed it up. You needed to do something a little bit more to potentially try and disrupt Arsenal. Didn't happen at all. These little pass maps we've got here now, Leon, we'll see. These are the two central midfielders on the day. And it wasn't their best day. We respect that and we understand that. The reds are incomplete passes. The white ones are obviously those that are pretty much that have found the right target, but so many from Højbjerg in particular, lots in his own half, lots square, a lot of these lateral passes that are just kind of continuity stuff, keeping the ball without really going there.
Ndombele is the same. And Ndombele came off after early in the 60 odd minutes, but his passes, there's no progression. There's no, here you go into your number 10, here you go into a Bale coming off the wing. I mean, this is where Gareth Bale would operate. Not a pass in sight. And the same is the case for Højbjerg. How many of those passes are progressive? How many of those break the lines of the Arsenal midfielders? And that was the key.
Yeah.
When you're playing in that position, Andy, you would have time and time again, how often, first thought, can you get the ball into your strikers? Can you get the ball forward? Yeah. Can you make the opposition's midfield have to turn towards their own goal? Because that disrupts anything. And they didn't do it at all.
Do you know, the clubs I can always remember, Jack Charlton, my international boss, keep our forwards in the game. The only way you keep them in the game is by rolling it to them. Or even if you just hit balls in behind teams, sometimes you're giving them an opportunity to feel like they're involved in the game. As a consequence of Spurs being pretty passive and just sitting back, Arsenal pretty much exploited that, Leon, and they were particularly strong down their left side.
They were. And it was Tierney and Smith Rowe up against Doherty and up against Gareth Bale, really. And they tried to get Højbjerg involved, but this happened time and time again. Just point out Smith Rowe coming into that position and making that run in there. And you've got the fullback all the way up in that position, just leaving himself exposed, going 1v1 with Tierney. Højbjerg can't deal with the pace of Smith Rowe, and suddenly Tottenham are defending crosses again.
Tell me a bit about Matt Doherty. Look, this isn't a guy that's accustomed to playing in a back four, so he did this time and time again. What did he keep doing wrong, here, Leon?
I would say if you're playing against Arsenal, you can see their 4 players there. You want your back 4 to be there because you've got to stop these players, and especially Smith Rowe, because he can make that run in there. You cannot give all that space for somebody to run into because the centre-half isn't in a position to cover it. The midfielders are too far away to be able to affect it. So until they get in position, you just hold your space and you ask Gareth Bale to get across and stop that.
Get there as quick as you can.
And just limit his options. If Tierney decides to run forward into these positions, then we'll all shove over. But for the time being, don't leave Smith Rowe, not only with time on the ball, but you've given him you're even telling him where to go and run into.
Yeah, you are.
And Arsenal exposed it time and time again. Tierney and Smith Rowe were fantastic. Tottenham's midfielders couldn't get over to cover, and they kept getting into these positions, effort, chances.
Yeah.
And should have actually created another goal for themselves in that first half.
It's almost like when Matt Doherty's in this scenario, to me, Leon, it's almost like he expects he's playing in a back 5, and he's expecting he's got a centre half in the channel, in the gully there. That's anything.
Well,
not
you would.
Behind
There's a
him.
wing back. You'd have 2. You'd probably have a third centre half there, which then allows him to go into that position. And with that case, he can go tight with Tierney if you've got a centre half, because Smith Rowe will run into that third centre back. But without one, you can't give up that space. We see it again. He just kept giving up that space. And, Smith Rowe's an intelligent player.
Yeah.
He's got energy, he's got skill, but he notices things on the pitch. This one is the one for me. He's actually up against Smith Rowe at this point. They're marked tight, up against him.
And he's never getting this ball that's pinged out there. He can't get
You only
that.
ever make that run if you arrive at the time the ball lands where you can
really
affect it, or
smother
just
him.
before, so you win it. If he's going to get there with comfortable time, you can't run. You can't do that. And until Sanchez gets over, or until Højbjerg gets over, you can't leave him unmarked, because as we've shown, he'll just keep running into that space. And intelligent footballers, I would have thought, would figure that out. Yeah, it happens once. Maybe happens twice, but that's it. Somebody figures that out. Sanchez says, whoa, stop going everywhere. Stay in here. Doherty himself. Højbjerg might say, I'm not getting to those distances. But time and time again, look at that. Just leaving him and allowing him to run into that position. Suddenly, Højbjerg's now found himself out wide with the left winger, who's got him for pace, he's got him for skill, putting the ball into them positions. And
too often, and it was a real theme, and clearly Arsenal and Mikel Arteta need congratulating. They'll have worked on that. They'll have seen that there's opportunities when Matt Doherty plays in a 4. He's unsure positionally. He's never quite sure when to go tight, when to drop off. And lovely footwork from Kieran Tierney. Too easy from a Tottenham point of view, and a little deflection, and you're a goal down. Simple as that.
Yeah, and I think that last clip showed everything about the game. Spurs dropping off, passive, not getting tight enough to Arsenal in any way, and then Arsenal really exposing that left side of the field. And that was definitely a game plan of Mikel Arteta that completely worked.
Lots of debate. I'm sure there's plenty of you out there from watching at the weekend wondered whether it wasn't a penalty. How did it come about, Leon, this penalty decision?
Well, it came about from poor play from Spurs. Spurs trying to play. I think what they're trying to do, they're trying to get Harry Kane in possession of the ball in this area. So they've split, they've put the defender comes into that position, trying to kid him to come further up the field, just to make that space a little bit bigger.
They want Arsenal to come and press.
Trying to get on top of them. That's why they get these players in these positions high up to make sure they keep the Arsenal back four back. But once you give the ball away, you've got to react. Dele Alli joining the pitch, doesn't get a touch, doesn't get an involvement before he sees his team concede the penalty kick. But obviously, just run it through.
Easily intercepted that one from
Lost
Maurice.
the ball. But at that point, once you've lost that ball, defenders have to react. Defenders have to come together, you're right. Matt Doherty,
what's his run?
in that position, has to suddenly go right into there. He has to link up with his centre-back. He has to get in tight. I'd expect to see that. But watch his run.
His run is actually out.
Watch his run. He runs up. He's still running up. The ball's in behind him. Now he's decided to try and get back and defend it. Sanchez is completely exposed, and then the debate, Andy, is that a penalty?
Do you know what? It was a wild lunge I felt from Davinson Sanchez. I think the general opinion everywhere around the world has been it probably shouldn't have been given because he's kind of missed the shot. You made a good point. If you give penalties for that, you could give them every week for defenders making challenges after strikers have had shots.
Yeah, I mean, the contact comes, and I think it's just as much initiated by Lacazette, but he's completely missed his shot. But you're right, if you're going to give penalty kicks for that, every time a striker gets a shot away and gets clattered, has to be a penalty kick from now on, because the contact comes after the potential strike or the strike on goal. And I thought once that went to VAR, I thought it would be overturned, or at least giving Michael Oliver the opportunity to go and have a look at it. Is that what you saw? Do you still feel it's a penalty kick? But it wasn't deemed to be the case.